All right, ladies and gentlemen, so today we're looking at how we can apply those properties that we have, to an equation instead of to, how about an expression? There we go. Okay, so when I look at this, here is my original equation, and I know that the first step that they should have done was hopefully to distribute, and it looks like that's what they did because they got 3x plus 6. They distributed a negative 2x minus 4, so distributive property. Now they're going to go and they moved, right? So just like we did before, we're looking to see what did I do to get from one line down to the next. So they moved the negative 2x and they put it over here. So now we have 3x and negative 2x together. Whenever you're changing the order, that's your commutative property, or addition in this case. Then they actually did the math, right? They did 3x minus 2x, and they got x, so that's your substitution. And this is where it looks a little bit different than what we would normally do in class. Normally now we would have to collect our variables on one side, and we would subtract x from both sides. Well, they show that as putting the negative x over here. They're adding it in on one straight line instead of going underneath it, but it's still the same step. So when you're canceling your variables to one side, that's an inverse property. And in this case, it's inverse for addition. So we use inverse a lot when we're trying to solve our equations. Inverses are always followed by substitution, because what we did then is we took this, right? We got negative x plus x, that was 0, that canceled out, that's your substitution. Over here, this one they then moved, right? They moved my negative x down and they put it in a different spot. So that's going to be another commutative. Then we actually did the math and we went from 4x minus x down to 3x. So that's going to be a substitution. Now we had to move our constant. So normally we would show it like this. They show it as adding negative 7 into both sides. It's still an inverse property or addition. Inverses are always going to be followed by a substitution. Then they're canceling our coefficient, right? To get from this side down to this side, you have to cancel your coefficient. That's your inverse for multiplication. An inverse is always followed by substitution. So this one, they actually kind of did a lot of steps. Normally we wouldn't have to do the commutative property because we would have already lined it up. And you'll see that in example number 3. So for number 2, here's my original equation. So what it looks like they're doing is they're trying to cancel this dividing by 5. So when you're canceling and dividing, that's an inverse for multiplication. Inverses are always followed by substitution. Right? So they actually did the math. They did 4 times 5 was 20. Those 5s would have canceled. Going from there. Next, now we have parentheses. So now I'm going to have to distribute. And then to get from here to here, now we're going to cancel our constant. Canceling a constant is your inverse for addition. Inverse is always followed by substitution because they actually did the math. Then from here down to step 5 to 6, we have to cancel our coefficient, so that's inverse for multiplication. And inverse is followed by substitution. All right, let's look at what we actually have to go through and solve it first. So when I look at this equation, I think, okay, if I were to go through and solve this, I have to do my distributive property, remembering to take the negative sign with it. So 5x minus 3x minus 3, negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. And on this side, 2x plus 8, distributive property. Just like normal. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. So they're already right next to each other, so I don't have to move them. So 5x minus 3x is 2x. And that is a substitution. Right, all I did was combine like terms. Now I have to collect my variables on one side. So this is how we show it, right? We usually put it right underneath. It's still an inverse property. So my x's actually cancel, and we know that inverse is always followed by substitution. And in this case then, this is no solution. We talked about that yesterday, where we have, when you cancel your variables out and you have two things that don't equal each other, it's a no solution. All right, one more. You got this. So I see parentheses, I have to distribute first. So 5n plus 34, negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, negative 2 times negative 7 is positive 14n. Distribute. Okay. I'm going to collect my variables. I'm going to move my 5n because it's smaller. So that's going to always be an inverse or addition. Inverse is always followed by substitution because I did the math. 14n minus 5n is 9n. Substitution. Now I have to move my constant. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. That's an inverse property. Or addition. Then I'm going to do the math. 36 equals 9n. Substitution. Then I have to cancel my coefficient. That's inverse for multiplication. And you, again, could show it as division like I did. You could show it as multiplying by the reciprocal. Inverse is always going to be followed by substitution as I do the math. So n equals 4. All right, so just kind of putting 2 lessons together. You guys got this. If you have questions, you know what to do. Bring it to class. Have a good night, guys.